I've got my.
Is that a confirmation message that we're live? We're live. We're live, everybody.
Hey!
All right. Hello and welcome, everyone, to the Superman Quest for a Good Game panel. On Superman's birthday, is there more perfect timing for this? Isn't that amazing? So, so me and my super friends here are going to be pitching you the perfect Superman game. But before we do that, I want to remind you guys that this is all for a good cause. All of the money being contributed will be given to all the real life Supermen and Superwomen carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders during this pandemic, and anyone that's been affected, that's short on resources and all of that. So please check out that Tiltify link and just give what you can. So we're down to business, guys. It's no secret that Superman's greatest weakness is video games, right? Like Kryptonite who? Fans are convinced that Superman just can't have a fun video game because, he's too powerful. He can't die. How do you make his invulnerability work? Flying in previous Superman games is just not fun. So guys, are Superman video games just doomed to failure? Or is the secret just behind a pair of thick-rimmed glasses? Today, me and my partners in crime fighting are taking on that monumental task of pitching you the perfect Superman video game. Look, up in the sky.
It's a bird.
It's a plane.
It's me, Matt Draper.
And it's me, Josh Sutton, from Panels Pixels.
And I'm Xavier Mendoza from that one show with a terrible name, Godzilla Mendoza. Hi.
And I'm Diego Rivera. And before we get to the perfect Superman game that we're going to be pitching you, our boy Matt Draper here, you're going to run us down the history of some of the, I guess, more prominent Superman games that we've had in the past.
Yes, I will. It's very unfortunate, but we have to get into it before we talk about it. So I guess the best place to start would be Superman 1979 for the Atari 2600. This was the first Superman game and the first superhero video game.
Yes.
Does anyone have thoughts on this tragic event?
Josh, I believe you might be a little familiar with this.
I have played this in my pursuit of comic book video game history. I've played this game, and I have to say it should be respected for being the first superhero game and kind of the first movie tie-in game as well, because it was kind of promoted alongside the.
And it's fitting because he's the first superhero too.
Exactly, but the game consists of Superman as like 4 pixels and a soundtrack that's just like this. And could be used to disperse gangs of teenagers, I think.
It's the wind blowing through his hair. It's the sound.
Yeah, exactly. But that's
and up next.
That's all I have to say.
Yes. Well, I guess that's a bit about it. Let me see here. I got this list. We want to talk about Superman, the Man of Steel. 1989.
Yeah, I've never been able. Oh, 1989. Okay.
1989. Do you want to talk? There's just so many. I'm looking through here.
There's so many.
It's a real tragedy.
What was Superman 64? You have any thoughts on Superman 64, Matt?
Well, that sounds about right. Did anyone else hear that, It was a game that I played in bits and pieces. A game that I don't think that anyone ever got past the first level of. You fly through rings. Mm-hmm. And that's about it, really. But you can't even really fly through.
You're forgetting though. You also fly through rings.
Right. There's also that.
Yeah. That's very important.
There's the rings, and there's more rings, and there's rings come after that.
Oh, but what about the rings?
I forgot about those rings too.
Oh yeah, those rings. I love those rings. Those are not the other rings, but those rings.
No, the later rings. The later rings are better rings. That's yeah. Let's go.
Okay, the rings.
But the middle rings are my favorite. So
we got a lot of diverse opinions on it. We could debate a long time about this one, about which rings are the best rings.
And so I think, I guess going in chronological order, we might have missed one, which is the 3D Multipath Adventures of Superman, Menace of Metallo, right?
I guess.
For the 3D, all right. So this one's a little interesting because this is an adventure style PC game. Where you which is like a popular suggestion on how to approach a Superman game, right? Like rather than trying to figure out how do you translate his invulnerability and his extensive arsenal of abilities, right, and making that work, why not just have what essentially is a movie in which you assume the role of Superman or Clark Kent, and you get to make decisions, and you can manipulate the story a little bit, right, to a certain extent. So, for example, in this game, there's a part where you're chasing Metallo over the city of Metropolis, and you're given two options, right? Do you want to use your heat vision and this game has a weird version of Metallo where he's like a walking tank, and he can walk up to different machinery and vehicles and sort of absorb them and take on their property. So for example, he'll walk up to a jet and he'll give himself wings so he can fly now. Or he'll walk up to a big truck and he increases his size. I don't know if that's a version of Metallo that's been done before. The one I'm familiar with is like the 90s one, where he's essentially a Terminator with the kryptonite in his chest. But anyway, you're flying over Metropolis and you're given the choice. Do you want to use your heat vision to knock off one of his wings, or do you want to use your super breath? And maybe that'll steer him off in another direction, that may be less populated, resulting in less collateral damage. And your decision will unfold future events and will take you on a path, one of multiple paths in this game.
There it is.
And another example, Superman is faster than a speeding bullet, but he can't be at two places at once, right? So you got Lois Lane being held captive in one location and Jimmy Olsen in another, and you choose who you want to save. And obviously your choices will have consequences.
And then you choose to save Harvey Dent, but he still becomes Two-Face anyway.
But can we trust him? One of my favorite ones are when you're Clark Kent and you gotta like figure out a way to sort of discreetly weasel your way out of a situation so you can like switch into Superman and do your thing. Like his super hearing will pick up, oh, there's something going on in Star Labs mid-conversation with Perry White. You gotta figure out a way to leave and change and do your thing. I thought those were fun. But the thing with this game is that it's kind of restricting in the way where you don't have full control of Superman. We play these superhero video games to become the Batman or feel like Spider-Man, and I can't help but feel that an adventure game doesn't let you live out that power fantasy of being a Superman.
Fair enough. Before we go any further, we should plug what we're giving away today.
Yes.
Yeah. We are giving away 2 prizes. That's a big jug of water. A $60 PlayStation 4 gift card and 2 digital comic book collections. Avengers: The Road to A-Day. And I made you laugh. I didn't want you to choke. I'm sorry. And the Spider-Man City at War collection that is ties into Spider-Man PS4. But now that we've talked about that, let's talk about some more bad games.
Well, could I just interject and say that I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, as far as I can, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but no one has hit any of the Easter egg donations yet.
Not that I know of.
And I would really like that to happen during our stream. So I wondered if we could make a little hint and kind of say, what they might want to be looking for in terms of donations, because every little helps here, even if it's just a few dollars. So,
these Easter eggs are so hidden that they're actually hidden from me too.
Okay. Well, it was my understanding that you might want to think about years that certain characters were first introduced in the comics. And so, Superman was first introduced in 1939. Is that correct? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
ending year. Yes. We don't have Superman. Ending years of certain characters. Oh, but we have Batman, though.
So, I'm not going to give you that one. I've given you Superman, and that isn't one. So maybe think about what year Batman was first introduced and maybe donate that amount and you might get an Easter egg. I'd love that to happen during our stream. So,
That'd be fun. Let's fly through these these pieces of crap. Death and Return of Superman, 1994, Super NES.
Decent beat 'em
Never
up.
even heard of it. I didn't exist yet.
Final Fight style, Double Dragon. It's all right.
Superman Shadow of Apocalypse, PlayStation 2, GameCube.
I was playing this earlier this evening. It's not very good.
Oh,
Diego played it a lot the other day, I know.
Yeah, it's a really generic beat 'em up. It does nothing special.
oh,
Superman the Man of Steel for Xbox 2002.
couldn't get to work.
I tried to find a way to play it, but I don't have an OG Xbox, and there's no ROM out there for it.
Superman Returns 2006 for PlayStation 2, Xbox 360, etc.
It's all right. It's close enough. I feel like of everything we've had, it's the one that's closest to something. Like it's not there, but it's in the right ballpark.
Mhm.
Yeah. Ballpark. You can't jump. You can only fly and walk. It's very
Right.
strange.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
We're past the days of being able to leap over tall buildings in a single bound.
And then you fight a tornado.
Right.
Yeah.
The ultimate boss fight.
Make it cool and hot.
So now that we ran through some of the Superman's previous games, it's time to get into our good Superman game. And so we've all split up the responsibility by giving ourselves a category that we're going to focus on and pitch you a certain aspect of the game. And Xavier here is excited to share some of his ideas for combat mechanics.
I got a lot to go through, so I got to do this quick. And I
Faster
actually
than a speeding bullet.
I worked these out with a couple of people that actually work in game development or are at least in school for it. And every time I pitched an idea, they would shut it down with, "But is that fun?" So what makes players feel fun? Feeling powerful. Superman's powerful. My main gameplay mantra for design is you should not have all gameplay mechanics tied to the idea of Superman being nerfed. He needs to feel like himself. Maybe contextually you can depower him for some things so that there's actual consequence in the combat and you can lose. But generally you should be able to, do all the stuff. So, all right, early game. You're fighting normal people, right? How does that work? Basically, imagine like Arkham style combat, but it's a little different in that you can't actually take damage from like human enemies hitting you. So picture, if you will, a group of 10, 20 enemies running at you, and you just sit there and all of them just start throwing punches and kicks and elbows and headbutts and everything. And the idle animation is still playing where Superman yawns a little bit. And you just hear all these meaty slaps of fists and nothing happening. But you hit the counter button for every single attack at once. You just kind of flex and knock them all back. That kind of move, right? So you have a power meter that actually runs out if you get hit, encouraging you to actually counter some of these moves against these weaker enemies, right? If you want to do, actual cool moves. But counters would be similar to Arkham in that, functionally it's the same, but the animations would be really different because you're not a normal human. You're not a Batman. You're a Superman. So imagine catching a guy's fist, spinning him around so fast that he's all woozy, and then knock him over, right? Or grab a guy, spin him around, just chuck him into a crowd of his friends. Or my favorite one, I really like this idea, is someone's about to throw a punch at you, you counter it, and Superman literally just hardens his stance and then just takes it on his jaw, and you just hear a cracking noise, and the guy just collapses to the ground holding his fist, right? That's fun, makes you feel strong early in the game, and, just helps you get used to the idea of actually doing the counter. You can't actually punch any of those enemies because, they're basically glass compared to you. But let's say you start fighting enhanced humans, physical combat from them can actually hurt if they hit you. People with superpowers, or, they can actually take a hit from you, and they'll be interdispersed with normal human enemies. So this guy can only counter, this guy can counter and hit, mix it up a little. But Superman, he's bulletproof. Let's say a guy shoots a normal gun at you. There'll be a little animation for you kind of holding up your hands. It's just kind of bouncing off. Maybe we can even do some kind of mechanic where you do some kind of bullet time quick grab thing if you press the right button, and it'll make it so that you can, take the shots without actually losing the momentum of your power meter. So later on, enemies get stronger. They live in the DC universe where it's not just normal ass guns and bullets. You got crazy sci-fi stuff. Anything can happen in DC. So maybe weapons powered by red sun batteries. And I imagine like guns firing these like red bullets that almost look like a laser out of Star Wars, or guys can maybe have jetpacks powered by these things so they can actually have some, verticality to the combat. Or let's say a guy has a stun baton that's just sparking red lightning. Now, you can't necessarily destroy the casing on their red sun batteries by, just hitting it with your hands because it's red sun. It's the only thing that kind of makes you weak by comparison. So you start using your powers at a little bit of a distance, and you have a power wheel. You select your ice breath, which has 2 modes. Now imagine like you press one button and it's just kind of blowing to just kind of push people back. You can use it for crowd control if you're getting overwhelmed. Or the secondary fire on it, which would actually like focus in and freeze someone's gun, or maybe their backpack for whatever weapon is powered, or a jetpack, something like that, or just freeze enemies in place. Keep in mind they have these red sun batteries so they can fire a blast of red solar energy to crack the ice, so you don't want to keep them waiting too long. So either you freeze them and then run over and hit them, or you toggle over to your heat vision and you can just blast them at a distance. Maybe later on you can start fighting robots that have their own kind of combat mechanics and you can hit even harder. I was thinking something like even a more involved version of that, like charge up punch from Spider-Man, where you press square, but you hold it down, knock them into the air. Maybe you can start doing an air combo that's just knocking people back further and further into the sky, get some actual, flight in there. And then, of course, there's boss characters that you can just toss them around, throw them through buildings, smash cars over their heads, whatever you want, right? I had this idea for some of Superman's, long distance mechanics, because he has a lot of range being as fast as he is. So imagine a long distance punch. So you're basically toggling it like a Batarang in Arkham. You aim it and there's a reticle around the guy. He's about medium distance, and then you press it and he just there's just this red blur and he falls back and you can't tell what the projectile was that hit him. It's you. The camera stays third person right behind you. It doesn't move anywhere. Run over, knock the guy down, and come back so fast it looked like you threw something at him, but you didn't. It was just your whole fist and your whole body, right?
That's fantastic.
And I imagine that could be, that could be tied to that whole, charge mechanic. So if you get hit, you run out of uses for that. So it has a charge up and cool down. Some enemies can block, which gives you an interesting problem, because if they block it, let's say you don't come back to where you were, you've essentially now gotten stuck at where they are, you're teleported to them, and now you're in close quarters combat when you weren't planning for that. So later in the game, maybe you can get an upgrade to just kind of bounce off of them and then just start fighting them again, get a little more of an edge in that close quarters combat when you're forced into that. And then I also thought of something like a lunge attack that can be treated almost like a web strike, where you're essentially zapping over to an enemy almost like a teleport to hit them. But you can aim it, turn your head, and then find someone else, if conditions are met with a certain amount of distance between you and them. And you can just start chaining them together, just knocking through guys that are like 10 to 15 feet apart, just one at a time. And you're so fast, right? So I also thought about maybe getting, how do you work in X-ray vision, right? There's a lot you can do with that. And initially I was like, just detective mode, but I wanted to come up with something more creative and interesting than that. So remember how I said you can aim mechanics like your freeze breath or your laser vision or that long distance punch? That would be a medium distance thing. But let's say you're aiming it with, your trigger, you click the stick in, and it's like a sniper scope where it zooms in even further. Then it sort of looks kind of detective mode-y, but not necessarily as technology-based, something more organic. And you can see enemies through walls with that, and you can attack them through walls. So let's say, depending on, the area you're in, because, if you're in Metropolis in the city, usually, depending on where you're at, I would imagine there'd be a lot of hitboxes on the walls. Superman's respectful. He's not going to go flying through everyone's house, right?
Depends on the
But
Superman.
say you're... let's not get into that right now. Let's say you're in LexCorp, or like you're at some kind of LexCorp facility, or on, you know, Brainiac's ship or something, right? What if the walls just tumbled down and just collapsed like in Red Faction, if you've played that, like where everything is just destructible. So let's say you see just a group of enemies at a distance. You zoom in, and you know it's not, they're too far away and they're behind a wall. But you click in that stick for that X-ray mode. You can see through the wall, or if they're just down the street on a rooftop, you can aim at them now and get way more distance on that, and then just like hit them at a, you know, from however far away. But let's say someone actually has lead armor on. You can see that at a distance. Let's say we'll put some kind of color on it, like orange or red or something, so that it's visually distinct to you, the player, in normal mode. But you zoom in on it, it's almost like a wobbly, warpy silhouette where you can't do attacks to that person. So if someone's wearing lead armor, it kind of takes out your ability to do long distance attacks on them, meaning you have to fly over and, you know, kick their ass manually. And then let's see, anything else I have here? I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything because I just had a messy section of notes. I imagine also something like maybe in gameplay, this isn't necessarily a combat thing, but let's say there's like an injured civilian, there would be like a sort of mini game where they're like, you know, you're holding them in your arms and you have to kind of scan over their body with X-ray vision to see where they're injured, and that'll decide what you do with the following rest of that scene.
Very good.
So
that's cool.
That's what I got.
A lot of great ideas. I like that you didn't do the easy thing, which would try to be restrict Superman's capabilities, just to make it a functioning video game.
The cop-out way is like every game does something to nerf him. Like, oh, in the opening cutscene, I have a shard of kryptonite the size of like a penny lodged in the base of my skull, and the only way to get it out is to beat the final boss. Or, oh, Lex Luthor put a giant red sun solar energy shield over the city that's making me like a little weaker than usual. Like,
Injustice also, I think everyone takes a pill that makes them a little more resilient, right? So
yeah,
they can stand a chance against Superman.
Which I feel like of all of them, that one's the most okay-ish. But you know, you still want to fight stuff that's generally context appropriate. You don't want to fight like Batman with super strength.
Right. And now we're going on to Josh, right? You got some ideas for some upgrades.
I do, yeah. But just on that last point, I don't know if you guys have played the 2018 God of War.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's an early boss fight in that, which is the most powerful I've ever felt in a video game. And it's just like, I remember playing that and just thinking like, it was a holy shit moment for me, because it was like, this is what a superhero game should play like, because it's just like speed and you're just pounding on this guy, and it's like the
just
more
tackling
you fight
him through whole mountains.
and the more you fight him, I can't remember who it is. It's Thor's brother.
Yeah, one of those.
Baldur.
One of
Zeus's kids. That sounds right.
So I think the way that you've described it, especially the kind of the zipping, the faster than the speeding bullet aiming thing, that sounds very much in that vein. So that sounds already we've got the greatest superhero game just from that. So props to you. Okay,
Thank you.
I was tasked with the upgrade thing. I've got my notes here, and originally when I was thinking about it, I was thinking, you could have I was thinking down the Arkham lane, which I think all superhero games kind of start off in that mold now, and I was thinking, you could have equipable items, and you can go down upgrade paths, and you can put points in this and this and that, and you can earn XP by beating enemies. And I was just thinking, none of this sounds like Superman. The beauty of the character of Superman is about traditionalism and simplicity, and I want the upgrades to be natural and kind of go with the story. We're going to get to the story, so some of this might contradict that. However, so I struck up on this idea that I was really excited. So basically, I want to have options for the players to suit their play style. So along the lines of what Xavier was saying about different powers and things, I want you to be able to think, well, I really like using heat vision, or I really like aiming the faster than the speed of bullet, or I really want to put all my points into speed and things like that. So I want there to be some kind of customizability in terms of that. However, the key to it is that the powers are gained. I don't know if anyone's played Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
Yes.
I have.
But whenever you gain a new force power in that, it flashes back to the training, to Cal's Jedi training.
Ooh.
And I thought, okay, well, let's go through the story. And as you progress through the story, you are like confronted with situations where you need super speed or you need X-ray vision. And I thought it would be cool to have a flashback. So he's in a combat situation as Superman. So let's flash back to the farm in Smallville, or wherever. Is it Smallville? Yeah, that's where the farm is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or is it Kansas City? I can never remember.
It's Kansas City, Missouri.
Right. Okay. And so you're on the farm, and what you're doing with your super speed or your super strength is you're helping Ma and Pa Kent. So you're lifting up a tractor, or you're lifting whatever. You need to get and herd the horses. I don't even know what they do on the farm.
That's perfect.
Do they have horses?
No, but like that's so like down to earth and wholesome. That's perfect.
I love that. Yeah, I love the sound of that.
Because it's crucial to me about Superman is that the things that he does as a hero are the values that are instilled in him as a kid in his upbringing. So it's about relating the two in that way. But then so the other thing is that when you're equipping the points into these powers is that you should go into the Fortress of Solitude, and that should be like the hub, right?
Nice.
So you click the touchpad or the select button or whatever, and you're transported. He flies off the speed of sound, and you're in the Fortress of Solitude, and he's meditating on these powers, and he's meditating on the kind of the past lessons that he's learned and things like that. And one final thing on that note is just that, as I said, I don't think it's appropriate. With Batman, you earn XP through beating up dudes. And that's appropriate for Batman, who is, a semi-fascist vigilante. But for Superman, I think it'd be more appropriate to earn those upgrade points through acts of heroism. And again, I don't know how this is going to play into Matt's story idea, but maybe this is a loose idea, but maybe like it's more about helping people and instilling inspiration in people than it is beating up people. So yeah,
I want an actual mechanic where you have to save a cat from a tree.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And okay, so I guess now that passes it on to me, and I'm gonna figure out a way to make flying fun, right?
Oh yes, I'm so excited for this.
As you guys just beautifully put together, encapsulating superheroes' traversal mechanics is just as important as making you feel what it's like to fight as that superhero, right? Spider-Man games needs no introduction. We've pretty much figured out by now how to translate web swing into video games. It's had its highs and lows, but we figured it out for the most part. Even gliding around as Batman is fun. Hulk in Ultimate Destruction, charging up your jump and soaring through the skies as this big boulder and just crashing down to the streets, leaving a crater. It's fun. Now, the thing that these traversal mechanics have in common is that they have limitations, right? They have multiple moving parts. They're dynamic to a certain extent. With Spider-Man, you have to take into account your environment. Do I have web buildings for my web lines to stick to? You're building up your momentum and speed, your parkour, and you're doing all this stuff. Even in Hulk Ultimate Destruction, as limited as it may be, your next jump might be different from your last depending on how long you decide to charge it, right? So I started playing some games that feature some form of flight with limitations. So I played Just Cause 3, where you play as this guy, Rico, who he has a grappling hook and a wingsuit that he'll deploy when you propel yourself into the skies. You deploy your wingsuit, and then you're soaring over the mountains of some South American city, right? And even it has the added element of the grappling hook that you can use to propel yourself and extend your time of flight. Or it can work against you. If you don't time it right, you might end up face first on a cliffside, right? Gravity Rush, I don't know if you guys ever played that game, features flight in like their own strange version of flight where you're not so much flying, but you're changing the direction in which gravity pulls you, in which the direction that you fall. So even that has its own limitations. So I started thinking, okay, like, is flight just not fun? Because there's a game out there that arguably I think nails Superman's ability to fly, and that's Superman Returns, right? But the problem with Superman Returns is that it's not fun to fly as Superman in that game. Superman's ability to fly, from my point of view, it has no scientific explanation, right? I'm sure there's a book out there titled The Science Behind Superman's Powers, but the way I see it, he can just fly. It's just magic. You know, he can go up, down, upside down, inside out. He can do it all once he's up in the sky. So, and the problem with Superman Returns is that, you know, you fly up into the sky, the open skies of Metropolis, and there's nothing kind of throwing a wrench into your moment-to-moment flying. You know, you can just fly. You go from point A to point B, but the problem is that what happens in between point A to point B, there's nothing interesting in the middle going on, right? So I thought, okay, what about we bring the character back to the 1930s era where he wasn't so much able to fly, but he can leap tall buildings in a single bound, and maybe I can play around with some hybrid ideas of future iterations of Superman and the 30s, where maybe once you're up in the sky, you can glide around for a little bit, and as the game progresses, the time in which you can glide, you know, is extended. But that's prototype. You know, that's been done in prototype, and yeah, it's fun, but it's not Superman. We want to bring what it's like to fly as the modern idea of Superman. And then I played Superman Shadow of Apocalypse a couple days ago on my channel. And again, it's kind of the same thing where it's not super interesting to fly in these open areas until I came across this level, and it was called like Reactor Meltdown or something, where you're in this underground lab and you got this big machine that's overheating. And one of the scientists tells you, oh, Superman, we need to retrieve these coolant crates and insert them into the reactor so the plate won't blow up. And you got 4 of these coolant things, and they're in their own little like obstacle course that you have to get through. They're in 4 different locations, and you got to go through an obstacle course. And you're flying, and the place is shaking, and rocks are falling, and lava spewing out of the walls, and I'm dodging these rocks. You know, I'm careening through all these obstacles, and I found myself having fun flying as Superman in this level where like the setting is like stimulating me, and I have to think on the fly, and it feels cool. It feels stylish to do these cool tricks as you're going through this obstacle course. So then I figured that the key to making flying fun is not so much the flying controls and mechanics themselves, but the setting in which you are flying. And then I came across this indie game titled Superflight, which you can find on Steam for like $2 or $3. It's not a promotion, but it really helped me on figuring out this whole flying thing. And Superflight is all about flying. You know, it's in the name. You play as this little stick man, and he's soaring through the skies. And there's like no missions, no story. It's just you're flying. And you're flying through these procedurally generated levels. Is that right? Where they're just random levels, right? That's the term that the developers use, procedurally generated or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's these rock formations and, you know, all these weird structures that you're gonna fly through. And the goal of the game is to build up your high score by having near misses with these obstacles and structures. So you get super close to a structure and you see your high score go up. You see a hole, like a tunnel, and you fly through it, and it's like this moment of threading the needle. And, you know, you get these moments of like you're tightly gripping your controller because you're not sure if you're gonna make it through, and it's fun and it's exhilarating and it's addicting, you know. And I think that's the key. You have people that will boot up a Spider-Man game just to swing through the city because it's interesting to go about these playgrounds, and, you know, everyone does it differently. Everyone's journey from their destination is different in a Spider-Man game. Some people are better at swinging than others. Others might web zip more often or use parkour more often. And so you have to take into the account the environment in which you're traversing. And so I think kind of having that idea of having Superman kind of have to interact with the environment by having these near misses, the Metropolis will be designed in such a way that you're sticking to building level in Metropolis. Like I want to not so much restrict the player from going into the open skies, because there's nothing interesting going on.
Let's say encourage them not to.
And the way I would encourage them to stick to building level rather than go up into the open skies is that by having these near misses, and Metropolis is designed in a way so where like buildings are kind of constantly in your way, not in an annoying way, but like they're there where you have to think about it. And you got highway tunnels. And I remember, I don't know if it's in the 90s animated show, but I feel like there's a version of Metropolis out there that has flying cars. Is that right? Is that from any version of Metropolis that has flying cars? Like Metropolis is this futuristic, like golden city that's kind of high tech and like the opposite of Gotham, where Gotham is like cold and murky and dirty and dark, and Metropolis is the opposite of that. Right. So I would design Metropolis. I would throw that into the mix, throw in flying cars to kind of play into the idea where you have to stay engaged as you're flying, and you can fly through subway tunnels and highway tunnels. And the way I would encourage the player to do that is by building up your speed, because like building up a high score, it's kind of weird, It's not necessarily an arcade game. And so by doing this, you're building up your speed, and it kind of plays into that element of Superman where you're trying to get somewhere quick, you're trying to get there in the nick of time to save the day. And in Superflight, if you hit a rock structure or you hit the floor or ceiling, your guy just blows up and your score goes to 0 and you start over. Obviously that wouldn't happen in Superman. It would just be that your speed is kind of then pulled back and you have to do these near misses again. And you got to build up your speed, and you're tightly, holding your controller, hoping you get there on time by pulling these tricks and all that. Now, I know that someone might ask, okay, so like, what is the in-universe reason as to why Superman is doing this, right? Like, why is he having these near misses with flying cars or flying close to buildings or going through highway tunnels and all that? And I don't really think that matters, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes a lot of like games nowadays are more focused on making sense from a cinematic point of view, right? Josh, I know you back me up on this. What happened to the days of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, right? Where it's about building up that score, that combo meter, showing your friends all the cool tricks you can do without getting interrupted. And it's satisfying and it's fun and it's thrilling. But I wouldn't need an in-universe explanation, right?
Let me ask you this in response to that.
Mm-hmm.
Why is Superman's costume indestructible?
It's magic. Well,
it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It looks cool,
exactly.
And then you can fly through a building and fly into the sun and get shot with bullets and doesn't tear. It's cool.
If I need a narrative explanation as to why Superman does the thing he does, or his psyche, or what motivates him, I got plenty of good movies to choose from, starting with Batman versus Superman. Am I right, Matt Draper? That's where I go. I don't hear you, but I think you're agreeing with me that if I want.
Which brings us on to let's talk about the Snyder Cut DLC that we're gonna put in this game.
All right, so there's just a Stepia filter already automatically applied. You can't.
No, let's not do this. Let's not do this.
But yeah, that would be my pitch for flying, to just kind of focus on making the setting in which you're flying interesting and incentivize the player to engage in these interesting levels to fly in.
No, yeah. I think putting a skill-based kind of element to it really encourages you to do something different. Like, because I feel like there's so many people out there who try to make that as like, what's the most interesting way to get from one end of the city to the other, and like how quickly, and like from a speedrunner point of view, that's like magic. That would be so fun for them to figure out. Like, how do I make sure to like near miss every building in the city, but also get there in 30 seconds?
Right.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
The way I see it is the key to Spider-Man and to Batman Arkham is that traversal. The reason the traversal is so fun is because it requires active engagement from the player. So the way I've thought about this in the past, and I feel like when you're flying as Superman, especially when you're going at super speed, you should be like fighting against the analog stick. You should be like, it's not just steering left and right. It should be like you should feel the weight of it, and you should feel the G's. You know, you should be having to steer against the G-force kind of thing.
And Matt, can you guys hear Matt? I can't hear him.
No.
No, I can't hear him right now either.
This is the opposite of Matt Draper's usual thing, where we can see him but we can't hear him.
Yeah.
There you
go.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, there we go. Yeah.
Just unplugged and replugged.
Sometimes that's all it takes.
So I was tasked with coming up with the story.
Hell yeah.
So here's the story. It's a typical day in Metropolis, and we can have the game start off with a high-energy mission, like Star Labs is being attacked by Metallo, and Superman has come in to save the day. You can use the first action set piece to show off how the hero is built, like the opening of Spider-Man PS4 with the Kingpin. So you fight Metallo, it's a tense battle, you got someone who you can really unleash on, and eventually you beat him. But the entire time, certain things sort of feel off. Colors change, buildings warp, but they're all kind of in the background. You're kind of flying by them and you're not really thinking about it. But as soon as you defeat Metallo, Mr. Mxyzptlk shows up, the reality who hates Superman with his entire being. And then boom, Superman is hit with a reality distortion beam by Mxyzptlk, and all of Metropolis is entered into a bubble that fractures reality and incorporates all the ages of Superman's history, setting up our story. So if this game becomes an ode to everything great about Superman and gives you everything you could never get in a Superman movie. So immediately, suddenly, you're in the 1930s. And so you've got, flashes back. This short section can be in like black and white even if you want. And with each act, so all of Metropolis, sections of it have been fractured into different realities and different timelines. So as you're flying through, you could be in the 30s or the 50s or the 70s or the 40s. You could be in an alternate reality. You could be in like Batman Red Rain reality. You could be in Superman Red Sun reality. Everything is fractured and slammed together jaggedly, but all of Metropolis remains together like that. So 1930s is your first start because you're just kind of figuring it out. And the 1930s are first, and you fight mad scientist Lex Luthor instead of your businessman Lex Luthor. And when you defeat him, Lex returns to his modern businessman characterization, becomes a major character for the rest of the story in the background. And he be kind of like somewhat siding with you to return Metropolis to normal, but also trying to benefit from it. So he becomes kind of a main character. So everything still happens in Metropolis. Superman can leave the bubble, like if you're talking about with going to the Fortress of Solitude. But Metropolis is altered, and Superman's really the only person that can change it. And also Lois is a major supporting character, but she's also been altered by this reality distortion. So saving Metropolis is also restoring your relationship with Lois. And that's kind of the main hook of the entire game. You can have the 1940s represented in a Fleischer Superman cartoon style, so sort of like fighting in World War II. And I was thinking you could have the prankster Toyman and Titano the super ape be your sort of representation of that. The 1960s can have Parasite and Ultra Humanite, who both are, larger, and they can, suck your power or sort of work against you. And the idea is, again, you have your normal crooks and everything, right? And they're distorted by the reality warp, but you've got big bad guys constantly that you can unleash against. 1970s can have Brainiac with his green skin, short shorts, and giant floating robot head spaceship.
Hell yeah.
And the 1980s can have Bruno Mannheim and Inner Gang as being like a sort of a continual force that you fight. The 1990s is a fight against Doomsday. And he'd be like a big villain, of course, and the entire time is like knowing that Superman dies fighting Doomsday. So how do you restore reality at the same time while fighting through this past version and not getting killed at the same time.
And he has a mullet.
He can definitely have a mullet. Superman can
Yeah.
also be warping, and those alternate like Superman costumes can represent all the different times and all the different realities. And I was thinking 2000s can be Manchester Black and the Elite from What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way. And then the final fight would be with Mxyzptlk, and we find out he's in league with Mongol, the war world, the warlord. He's in league with Mxyzptlk to torture Superman, like For the Man Who Has Everything by Alan Moore. And so you've got a completely powered up, super powered Superman versus a dimension warper and an intergalactic warlord with all of Metropolis at stake. And if you fail, Metropolis will be warped into War World and become Mongol's domain. And that's the big climax of it. And I was thinking the final fight can have Superman like warping through his different versions. You could even have different versions of Superman like helping him out. I was thinking also you could have a Legion of Evil Superman as one of the villains too. So you could have Superboy Prime, General Zod. You can have, all these Bizarro Superman, and they can all be working together too as one of the bigger fights too. So it's Superman versus multiple Supermen. And that would be the general scope of the story and your structure.
That is amazing. I don't know if you saw my reaction when you mentioned that it'll be like a different like Superman through the ages, but you blew my mind.
Yeah.
I swear to you, man. We have that freeform section. I wanted to bring up, okay, how about like, because Spider-Man PS4 and even Marvel's Avengers a little bit, they're kind of doing like their own version of the character. So I was like, man, is there a way that we can have like Superman goes through the ages in real time? Like, but I couldn't figure out, all right, but like, where do we place Lois Lane? Like, she's gonna be in the 30s or in the 70s? Just Superman going through these ages, and you bringing in Mr. His name, I can never say
Mxyzptlk.
Yeah, that guy is a flawless way to bring that idea. Awesome, man. I love it.
Well, what I like about that is I feel like that inadvertently kind of sets up for a lot of our ideas too, because now, if we're having like some kind of pulpy mad scientist 30s thing, then you can actually have like some kind of retro futurism, flying cars, or like Diego's idea, or if there's depending on which section of Metropolis you're in, maybe there can be more destructible environments to do that whole fighting people through walls thing, and destructible buildings and stuff. So that's really cool. I love that idea, and kind of gave me like sort of like Lego Marvel 2 but better vibes. And that's like I can imagine like the way that Spider-Man PS4 is segmented out with all of its like different districts of the city. It could be just like based on which time period it's in, and you'd like have a certain number of quests or side quests or even just little helping hand things to do, and like, oh, in the 30s section, or over here in the 70s area, and all of them could be based on which area that is, like context based. So that gives a lot of variety too, is what I love about it.
You know what's something really cool that we could do too with this whole different realities thing? We can have different Superman voice actors from the past kind of
Ooh.
do, during the 90s section. I love Tim Daly as Superman in the 90s.
He's
great. Because that's something I wanted to ask you, like who would you want to play Superman if you got a particular...
Yeah, I would pick him, yeah.
Yeah, very much like that. Kevin Conroy reprising his role, which is another idea I thought of, like the way kind of the Arkham games are sort of, some people see them as like a continuation of the 90s show.
The first one especially feels like it actually has scenes where the dialogue is just lifted from cartoons.
Yeah, like I would love like a spiritual like sequel in a video game of the like, 90s.
Leave it ambiguous enough that it could be the comics or it could be the cartoon, but like either one, and it would fit. I like that a lot. Yeah,
he's established, things have happened. He's not new Superman. He's been Superman for a while, right? With all these different pieces of his history.
Yeah, and then that leads to more interesting dialogue, I think, when you meet different characters, because you already have history with them. You don't need to ask Metallo who he is, or Bizarro, or Lobo. Why does every Superman villain's name end with O? Does he fight Goro or Motaro?
Oh, that would be sick. All right, you guys keep talking. I'm pulling up our winners for our giveaway.
Right.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I want to ask you guys: do you have a particular game developer that you think could be up to the challenge to bring us this Superman game?
Rocksteady.
What about you, Josh? Any ideas?
The thing is, like, everyone always kind of pitches the big cinematic ones, like Naughty Dog or Sucker Punch or that kind of thing. And I don't know if that would be the right way to go, because I think what we've laid out here is very, very unique and gameplay heavy. And although the story can be very cinematic, I think I don't want it to be. I don't want there to be, as I was saying, I don't want it to be passive engagement. So I don't know. That's something that Rocksteady really got right with the Arkham games, is that it feels like you're always engaged. It doesn't feel like you're just watching a film at any point in those games. So yeah.
So like a little mini pitch I'll insert here is, so I mentioned Just Cause 3 earlier, and you know how that game is all about destruction, right? All using Rico's arsenal of weapons and gadgets to just cause mayhem. And you got physics at play and all that. So I wanted to sort of pitch a Superman game that is kind of the opposite of that. You have Superman's arsenal of abilities to prevent destruction. So you got physics at play as well, like the way vehicles would interact to your super breath. Just a really heavy physics-based Superman game where you're just trying to prevent destruction. It's sort of the antithesis of Just Cause in a way.
I also think like it could be cool to maybe put in some kind of system to like kind of, like try to. I don't think you should be like babysitting the city, because that's not fun. But like at the same time, like if someone throws a car at you, there should be like the counter button will come up and you just catch it and lightly, just gently set it down, like as politely as possible. Or like, if you see someone flying at a building and they're about to crash into it, maybe do something to like go catch him and pull him back before he hits the windows. Like just little things in here where he's like actually being really respectful of the environment of the city. He's not trying to just like Man of Steel it.
Because again, we have to make you feel like Superman, and a big part of feeling like Superman is taking care of Metropolis.
Yeah, and then that would also make it more fun when you get to certain, in-game zones where you're allowed to just trash the place. Yes. Like, because if you're at like, Lex Luthor's encampment where he's just got like a giant death ray shooting laser, like, who cares? Knock that shit down. Like, just start chucking whole trucks at it. That would be cool. It would allow you to, get the best of both worlds, where you get that big, crazy blockbuster explosions and destruction, but you also, it's contextually appropriate stuff.
Sweet. I want to ask you, since you came up with this awesome story, do you have any ideas for the name of the game? Because I wanted to do it justice and truth and American way.
Oh, I think you might be onto a title, actually. I feel like
Superman, Truth, and Justice.
There you go. Not bad.
Cool. Well, what's nice about that is it doesn't handcuff you to a specific theme, because like you don't have. I feel like a problem with the Arkham games is the fact that they attach themselves so heavily to Arkham. They had to keep coming up with an excuse every time to go back to that. If you give it something a little bit more, just basic like that, but also distinguishable. Because is there like a ton of Superman stories named that? Did you say Superman, Truth, and Justice?
Not that I know.
There's Superman Truth. There's What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way, but not so much.
But so it has a nice distinction. You're not going to confuse it for something else. So like you could go like, oh yeah, that's Truth and Justice Superman. Like when you see his costume, you have that distinguishing thing. It's like, yeah, that's the Truth and Justice version.
Yes.
That would be cool.
Nice.
Which is another fun thing, we can just throw in alternate costumes and all that. Just have them all in
like
there, just have them
Man of
all.
Steel suit, Superman Returns suit, something from the cartoons that's just like really cell shaded.
Mhm.
All right, before
10
we go
billion
any
different
further-
versions with no trunks.
Oh gosh, maybe just the one. Before we go on, we have our winners.
All right.
This is why I've been checked out for a minute. The winner of our $60 PlayStation 4 gift card is Horizon Brave.
Congratulations, Horizon.
Who says, good luck to all the small businesses out there. And while I'm not religious, best thoughts and wishes to everyone. Thank you. And then our winner of the 2 digital comics, Marvel's Avengers Road to A-Day and Marvel's Spider-Man City at War, is Elisa. I have your email, but I won't give out that, but I can identify who you are. We'll make sure that you get all that stuff. Congratulations, Elisa. We'll get you those comic books soon.
Very great.
Nice.
All right. Thank
Awesome.
you all. And again, I want
comics after this.
I want to remind everyone of Matt's donation goal for this whole thing, where if we hit 10,000, right, you will make a video based on the highest rated comment.
Based on Spawn.
Yeah.
Spawn.
Really.
Matt.
Matt, I can't. I know we have to isolate ourselves during this crisis, and I want to recommend you some pieces of media that you might want to get into. If you like video games, Spawn, Armageddon. If you like animated shows, can I get hashtag Spawn in the chat, please?
Hashtag Spawn in the chat.
Please.
Press F.
Everybody hashtag Spawn in the chat.
Matt, it's important to have a mask, face protection. I recommend this good thing. It's going to keep you well protected from COVID-19. Please hashtag Spawn. Let's get Matt.
Pay respects. Diego, I believe it was you who said that the first 100 issues of Spawn weren't very good, but after that, they were okay.
So I didn't have the patience to get farther than 20.
Toddy Mac, if you're in the chat, this one's for you. I hope you're a better writer now. Good luck.
No hard feelings about our weird rivalry, Todd. It's just always kind of been in the background of things.
And so that was our pitch on a Superman video game. And as always, I love to hear all your thoughts and pitches on a Superman game. And let us know what you thought of our ideas and share your own. And this was a lot of fun. And you guys knocked it out of the park.
And you can pet Crypto the Superdog in our game.
Yes, he's gonna be at the Fortress of Solitude, just chilling. You could go over, pet him a little bit, give him a biscuit. The whole works, and also that should be like customizable and have all kinds of trophies and Batcave kind of stupid dinosaur stuff. That'd be awesome.
All right, that was it. Right?
Great.
Yeah.
All right, let's end it.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, everyone.
See you next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.